Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Marion O'Connor.
What's up, brother? How are you?
Oh, living the dream, living that dad life is what I'm doing.
That's why we're 23 minutes late to starting the show. Not that we ever start on time anyway, but
no, we're usually starting a few minutes late anyway. But I have a toddler doing potty training, wanted to get up, go to the bathroom. That's how it goes.
yeah.
But in the wider world of things going on, we have a bunch of stuff happening today. A new set of Democratic reforms that will effectively subsidize NIMBYism, which is amazing, and get in the way of both building things like housing and also get in the way of building things like wind turbines and stuff like that too.
Yeah,
So
this is great.
Yep.
Good times.
Yep. And then an interesting article that you brought out about the growing your own food.
Yeah, good times, Kevin. They're studying the fact that, look, you and I have talked about it, man. We'll talk about it more on the show. Growing your own food is a hard little side job that doesn't pay at all. But like, thank God the government, now has evidence accumulated. I mean, they can crack down now, like to save the environment. You people growing your own food, destroying the environment. Your carbon footprint is massive, just massive. Stop doing it immediately. If you have seeds, throw them away. Shop in the center of your grocery store. Just fill yourself with sugar. Like that's the future.
Tim, slow down. You're going too fast down the slippery slope, buddy.
I'm just saying, man, that article set me off. And look, I wanted it to be fake. I wanted it to be a mocked up kind of joke. It's not. It's not, Kevin.
So, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about like UAP preparedness. So we'll also talk about what's going on in Jordan and continued escalations over there.
Yeah.
In the Middle East and maybe more. It's one of those shows
maybe
where
more.
I know we got a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of stuff we could talk about out there. But we'll see what we get to in our regularly allotted show. And of course, leave your comments. Love to hear from you. And any good ideas, additions to the story, you let us know. Weigh in. Maybe we'll read them on air and on the show. Appreciate everyone who's already in here already. Patricia, Shelly, John, you guys are great. Thanks for being here. They want to go in 3, 2, 1.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Marion O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. How are you, man?
Living the dream, Tim. Living the dream. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there, man. It's been an interesting week in news. I don't think that there's any way 1 hour is going to be able to for us to cover all the things that I'd like to talk about and chit chat about and break down and having interesting conversations about. But man,
Tim, I mean, it never does. We only got so much news hole that we can fill, and that's what it is. But of course, if you listen on WYSL, we're gonna talk. We're gonna do our 3 segments thing, but we also talk during breaks, stuff that doesn't get heard on the radio, and sometimes continue talking afterwards. So make sure you find our podcast. Just look for A Free Solution wherever you find your podcast, and we got a little bit more show in there. Usually we go for a full hour and a half. So
and we sometimes use swear words, and my rants are slightly more epic and less reserved. And Kevin
Tim is holding back during the show.
Yeah, I'm holding. Guys, I know you might find that hard to believe, but I am literally holding back during the show. Absolutely.
But we got plenty of stuff to talk about today, as Tim said. And so Tim, where are we gonna start? You're already getting fired up during the pre-show about the growing your own food thing. Maybe we'll start with that. We got that. We got subsidizing NIMBYism, UAPs, bunch of stuff. You want to do the food thing?
Yeah, let's do the food thing, man. An article dated January 22nd, written by Joe Pinkstone in The Telegraph, and it broke on Yahoo News. The carbon footprint of homegrown food, 5 times greater than those grown conventionally. Growing your own food in an allotment may not be as good for the environment as expected, a study suggests. A study from the University of Michigan looked at how much CO2 was produced when growing food in different types of urban farms and found that on average, a serving of food made from traditional farms creates 0.07 kilograms of CO2. The impact on the environment is almost 5 times higher at 0.34 kilograms per portion for individual gardens, such as vegetable patches or allotments. And I presume allotments means maybe you're a big city guy. What do you mean by allotments? Is that like your little neighborhood community garden? What is that?
I mean, that's a way to put it. I mean, we have a community. I'm part of a community garden actually, which is a nice little thing, right? It's
not once the city of Rochester gets a hold of this study, pal.
No, I know. Yeah, we gotta shut it down for climate. I mean, we've talked about the garden a little bit on the show before, where I've clashed a little bit with the city where we disagree about how much the lawn should be mowed or whatever, right? But yeah, either way, I mean, I think growing your own food's a great thing. But yeah, Tim, you don't like this, but you're worried that like they're gonna take evidence of this and do what?
Well, arguably, I'm not so much worried that they're going to do something. It's the way that, first of all, as I've mentioned many times before, I'm a little bit familiar with statistics. I think that this study doesn't really take on the issue of what I would call the statistical knowledge required to make the bold statement that growing food in a garden at your house creates a 5 times the carbon footprint of food grown in a more conventional agro farming kind of situation. That would be my number one critique of this. Number two, I think that Kevin and I think that everybody feels like they're slightly under assault from climate change alarmists. I think that basically no real metric is offered in this thing. That what if we did, let's just say, what if we did away with, we made a law and everybody followed the law and they stopped growing their own food in, urban gardens and allotments. What would be the net effect, percentage change, percentage reduction in the carbon produced in the world in all of the manufacturing and growth processes? Like, my guess is that it would be statistically insignificant. Does that make sense?
If people stopped growing this stuff, it'd be statistically insignificant.
Yeah, if we were only buy food from in the most carbon neutral ways, like produced in the most carbon neutral ways, which I'm presuming is like medium to large size agro farms, right? And
okay, so you mean like from a carbon output perspective?
Yeah, from a carbon output perspective, what would be the impact if people were to stop growing food?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, probably not a lot. Mostly because a lot of people don't grow their own food, though.
Kevin, I'm telling you, I think it would be insignificant. I think that even if the article as presented is in fact accurate, that somehow there, and I'll get to it later, they do make an interesting point, but that somehow growing lettuce in a garden near your home in an urban area produces 5 times the carbon emissions of food grown out in the agro business kind of world. If that's even true, like, would it be significant? Is it a statistically significant source of carbon?
Yeah, I mean, probably it probably really doesn't matter, and it depends on what you grow too. Like you go down into the article and it says like fruit was found to be 8.6 times more eco-friendly when grown conventionally compared to in the city, and vegetables 5.8 times. But then you go down as like, well, but asparagus and tomatoes are actually like have a lower carbon footprint if you grow them in your backyard.
Yeah, because they fly asparagus around the world for people to consume. Like that's the issues of transportation.
And if you want to grow asparagus in New York, like you basically got to do nothing, and it'll just keep showing up every year. Like you just got to go out and remember to cut it before it like shoots up too far.
Look, I think it's kind of this I want to call it pseudo-intellectualism, this kind of study that actually has no real relevance and no real meaning, and yet somehow makes a big, huge headline. And maybe the fact that it's people reacting to it so negatively is what makes it a headline. But the fact that somebody funded this study, like either a Monsanto or some climate alarmist group, funded a study that started with the supposition of, hey, let's take on,
I mean, so like like the immediate group I thought of, like it wasn't like folks like you necessarily. It's kind of the left wing hippies who are like, oh man, we're gonna fight big corporations by growing our own food, and it's gonna be great. And I'm gonna be carbon neutral by like doing everything myself and doing it organically. Like I actually thought of that type of person who like they put on. They virtue signal about how good they are because they're not buying from big corporations who are polluting like the environment, and they grow everything themselves. But like in actuality, they probably are. Like again, to me, like I don't actually care. Like if you want to grow your own food and you want to do your thing, you should be able to do that. Full stop. Like it doesn't matter, right? But it probably is more work. The thing is, professional farmers are really good at what they do. They're super efficient at what they do. They have like massive pieces of equipment, and like a tractor is going to use some fossil fuels to do its job. But how much, fossil fuels are you going to use to gather all of the supplies to grow a garden in your backyard? Probably a lot more. And that's fine. It's your right to do that.
Yeah.
Farmers are really good. They're very efficient. That's why they make a ton of cheap food to keep people in the U.S. fed, right? Like that's why we have an abundance of food here, is because farmers are really good at what they do. And so like that's kind of how I look at that. I know like how you're looking at, but like I look at that as like farmers have gotten really good at making stuff like very efficiently, and I get to benefit from that abundance.
I absolutely agree with that, but there are people that think that they're and I'm you can kind of put me in that camp where people like who want to grow their own food. A, it's rewarding. B, there is a possibility that modern farming tactics and fertilizing and phosphates and stuff like that being used in food production are not as healthy for us as keeping an eye on our own patch of food. Now, I buy 99% of my vegetables and stuff like that from a grocery store. I do get some stuff from farmers markets. Like I've had gardens in the past. I'm not recommending you take on the work of a garden, but I find that this kind of and again, I'm going to call it pseudo-intellectualism, even though that's repetitive at this point, that I find it to be an unnecessary discussion about people growing their food. Like
like Tim, you got a bunch of government money and you got to study something with it. Tim, like, come on, what else are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, look, and here's our friend John offers a comment that John Thuman on
I was like, can we go through this show without talking about Taylor Swift? We'll read the comment. We're going to talk about Taylor Swift. My God.
Yeah,
John,
but here's the juxtaposition that pops up in everybody's mind when we see articles like this. Like we see a group of rich elites.
Well, let's read this because the folks listening on WYSL do not know what comment you've put on our video screen.
Okay.
John on YouTube says, but Taylor Swift flying her private jet to see her boy toy play a game is not a carbon issue.
Right. We don't see articles about that almost ever. And when we do see them, they're from the right attacking the left. And
occasionally you'll see the lefties do that, and they're insufferable too. So
yeah, there's a certain amount of like, if we're going to virtue signal about carbon, shouldn't we stay out of private jets? Shouldn't we take commercial flights? Isn't that the least that we can do?
I don't know, is Taylor's I guess she does do some stuff on environmental causes. I don't even know.
Yeah, no, I don't think that the point is so much Taylor Swift or anything like that. It's the issue of if we're going to attack massive carbon expenditures, or if we're going to be paranoid about CO2, why aren't we paranoid about the John Kerrys, the Taylor Swifts of the world? They don't even necessarily have to be involved in directly advocating for the environment, why aren't we taking a look at the elites who are burning massive amounts of carbon with 5 houses? Like, if it's a real issue, why aren't we taking a look at them? I think that's the basis of
the lefties are, to be fair, they are,
they're not poking their fingers at John Kerry. They're not poking their
oh
fingers at
no, well, if you go far enough left, they absolutely are. You go far enough left, they're on the eat the rich left.
Give me those people, man. I love those people. Bring them to me, Kevin.
Anyone with more than $1 million should literally be eaten because rich people shouldn't be allowed to exist. That's
that's a little extreme. No,
yes,
no. Okay, at least they're philosophically consistent. I'll give them that. That's fine.
They are consistent. Eat the rich. Yes, Bernie Sanders too. Eat him as well. Okay, guys. Good conversation, folks. No, but.
So I think we captured the essence of what I'm getting at, that there's a real frustration out there in the world that, and I feel the frustration with the climate alarmists, that there's a dense amount of hypocrisy going on, that people growing their own food, even if we outlawed it, would not positively impact carbon emissions in the world at all, right? Like one jet flying around the country for Taylor Swift probably equals all the carbon burnt extra for growing your own like rutabagas. You see what I'm saying? Like, if we were to do a real comparison, that would be an effective one. This one is just silly, though. I do like some of the things that they offered. Like, I like the notion of, tomatoes grown in a greenhouse. If you grow them at home, you're probably helping your carbon footprint. Like, okay, that's a fair point. Repairing old stuff instead of building new stuff, that's probably a way to mitigate your carbon footprint. That's something that I do pretty regularly. So, like, but overall, the article is a mass negative, and I don't
see. I did not see it nearly as negatively as you did. I saw it mostly as like, hey, if you want to reduce your carbon footprint, like, this isn't necessarily the way to do that. You can do it. It's just this isn't really going to make the impact you think it is.
Right. I saw it as attacking an independent mindset, like where people are trying to step out of the systems and say, these are things I can do myself, which I like that when people do that.
Which you could do that. As me, like I know I'm not good at gardening. I've tried growing stuff before. I'm okay at tomatoes. I'm okay at growing like sage and oregano and basil, stuff I don't have to tend too much to. Yeah. Everything else dies. It's just bad. And I will buy my like greenhouse tomatoes that I can get fresh and tasty and like still on the vine.
Your carbon footprint for those tomatoes, Kevin, I think that would be an issue.
No, see, here's the thing. If they're grown in an area like this, like where I live in Rochester, a lot of that is powered by nuclear power, and that doesn't have a big carbon impact. And like all the climate change folks,
down all the nuclear reactors in Germany, if that's not some sort of danger.
Well, Tim, good news. Joe Biden is subsidizing nuclear power again.
Okay,
well, Joe Biden isn't. He ain't doing nothing. We the taxpayers are subsidizing nuclear power again. They're gonna spend like $1 billion, and they're gonna spend some money to like open up new power plants in like Michigan or something. That's all. So,
hey, you'll get no argument from me. Like the more power we have, the limitless amounts of electrical power is what the future should be all about. And
there are worse ways to spend our money.
Yeah. I mean, sure. Do I want a private sector solution, and do I want tiny nuclear reactors that I can set up in my backyard because I think those are technologically possible, where I sell electrical power to my neighbors? Sure, that I think is a better way.
Yeah, Tim is that type of YIMBY. Yes, in my backyard, like
in my backyard, please.
Yes, like literally in Tim's backyard, he would like a small modular reactor. And
I think the technology is there. I live on a lake. I could rig it up so that if it starts heating up, I dump it into the lake and cools it right off. That's how Fukushima worked out. That's how the ships in Thailand work out. Like if it heats up, they dump it in the ocean. Done. Shuts it off. Period.
Yeah. No, that's what you can do. And the SMRs, they also have like the shutoffs where like as soon as something goes wrong, it immediately hits the control rods. It's all mechanical, like
Yeah.
all
And the
automatic.
temperature
Shuts down
sensor
quick.
on it. Once that burns out, shut her down.
Yep. So it goes. I did just share an article if anyone's interested. And if you're listening on WSL, you just have to go check the Facebook page about that, which is again 1.5 billion to restart a nuclear power plant in Michigan. So I wish it wasn't that expensive. But
Yeah.
it's how it is, and we're going to talk next segment too about like environmental NIMBYism and like NIMBYism generally and subsidizing NIMBYism, but we'll save that for the next segment. And oh no, I was going to make another point about the garden thing, other than the fact that, you know, again, I marvel at the technology, and I'm glad that like I can get awesome fresh tomatoes like grown in a greenhouse within a few hundred miles of me that are shipped fresh in the middle of January, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
And now my kid, you know, he'll eat the fresh vegetables, right? Like, you know,
yeah,
he likes them because they're fresh tomatoes, and they're like heirloom variety tomatoes that are sold at Aldi or whatever.
Yeah.
And
look, I appreciate the fact that you kind of run a counter narrative to what my emotional reaction to that story. Like, I think that's important for people to hear. Although in this case, man, the heck with those guys. Just
the heck with those guys. Heck with the
They'll
big
get no quarter
corporations.
from me.
No, man. I am totally fine with corporate farmers. Like, you know, for me, like you know, it's mostly great. You know, corporate farmers, small farmers, medium farmers. You know, like
but I'm
all
okay
sorts
with
of folks who are
farms, and I'm okay with somebody having a patch of like rutabagas in their side yard. I'm okay with all of it. And I think
you should. You want to grow your own stuff. You absolutely should be able to do. And I think you and I are 100% on the same page of like anytime like a government's trying to shut down, like, because you'll see that sometimes where people like not even just in HOAs, but like in cities and stuff, people will try to turn chunks of their front yard into like garden space, and the city will get mad about it. And like, oh no, you gotta have grass. Like, why? It's your lawn. You should be able to grow tomatoes on it if you want to. You know, and especially if they do start throwing out like, well, actually, it's more carbon efficient if you buy at the grocery store. Like, you know, by the time you drive to the grocery store, sometimes like it's probably not like really all that much different.
Yeah,
and they'll say that's why you should ride your bike.
That stuff very well, Kevin. That the massive amounts of transportation that go on in providing end use food, fresh vegetables to the consumer. I don't think
it is a bunch. You know, again, it's relatively efficient, but there's a lot of logistics that have to happen to get, you know, food from all over the world to make sure you in the middle of upstate New York are able to have fresh stuff. On that note, though, we are going to have to head to break. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. Shelly says the grocery store bags are perfect for bag gardening. Yeah, man. Like, are you thinking of the plastic ones or the paper ones? But you can reuse that stuff. And again, that's what the article talks about. Reuse this stuff and recycled materials in your gardens. But this remind me of there's a story that came out in New Jersey where they did a study about the impact of the plastic bag ban there, like where they banned those single-use bags like they did in New York.
Yeah.
And they found that people were using 5 times as much plastic after the bag ban because they would get those, you know, kind of cheap reusable bags from the stores, and you know, they use up a lot more plastic. Like, you know, even the cheapest, the thinnest ones are like 6 times as much plastic, often new instead of recycled. And yeah, people were using 5 times as much.
Yeah,
because they were only using them 2 or 3 times, even though it's 5 or 6 times the amount of plastic.
I'll be honest with you. That was really annoying when they did that, and then B, like, it was a source of like cleaning up around the house. It was a source of going outside and grabbing the dog poop for free, right? So now I've got to buy miniature bags to do that. And
yeah, no, it drives me nuts. Like all the little like tiny trash cans in my house, I used to just like use like Wegmans bags for those, and now
Yeah.
I gotta go buy special bags for all those like little garbage cans. Unless, I mean, takeout places still have it, but I don't get enough takeout where I can like do that.
Yeah, correct. I have the same issue. I was so frustrated with that. I also knew that the externalities of them getting rid of those bags, that they were actually a very efficient thing for me, that I didn't just use them once, that they came in handy for multiple things. And then I also knew that I would not have bags when I needed them, and I'd have to run to the store and buy freaking tiny garbage bags because we were all out and I had to clean the yard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't wait for spring, Kevin. Like the mounds of yellow lab, 100-pound yellow lab,
No, I know. I have 100-pound black lab, so he's actually, I can hear him outside. He's barking right now, despite the fact that it's 10 o'clock at night and what he's barking at. But I see some other folks out there. Alice says, look for CSAs. Yeah, that's another good place to work. I mean, bunch of different structures with those. I used to get one here in the Rochester area that was just like a pay model, and you just paid money, got a box of random vegetables once a week.
Okay, hold on. I don't know what a CSA is.
Community supported agriculture. So basically it's like like it might be like a farm share program where like you just again pay. And then other times it might be like literally you go and like you spend a few days working on the farm.
All right.
There's different models
just like
out
Venezuela
there.
Then.
Yeah, exactly.
Venezuelan model.
Except for in that case, you have a gun pointed at you,
but better because it's
actual or implied.
Yeah.
But yeah. And I saw another comment here too about, Patricia, your friend arrested for collecting rainwater a few years ago. Water garden with it. True rebel at 72 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think articles feel like an extension of that kind of governmental nonsense. Articles like the one we just discussed feel like that kind of extension.
Yep, exactly. But anyway, we should probably get back to the main the main program.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about subsidizing NIMBYism.
Yeah, I want to have this conversation. I don't have an article, so you're gonna obviously, I'll just reflect on what you say. I monopolized the first segment. You monopolized the second.
All right, we're going back in 3, 2. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm still here, Kevin. And guys, I'm sorry I got so upset about that stupid garden article, but like, it's just people feel like they're in the crosshairs of this environmental thing. These environmental alarmists. Kevin, you have something that you want to talk about that also puts everybody in the crosshairs. I feel like. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Sometimes you are, and I. Actually, maybe I'll save this for after this segment, but I saw something from a local city council person here in Rochester that I might want to talk about. But I'm going to save that for the bonus segment. So if you're listening to WYSL, you're going to have to listen to the podcast. Sorry, just catch the whole thing where we talk about fun stuff in the breaks. But I want to talk about the subsidizing NIMBYism. Specifically, it's around environmental NIMBYism because there's a new bill out there called the Clean Electricity and Transmission Acceleration Act. Now, Tim, if you're just reading the title of this bill, as one does, right?
Yeah.
You would assume that this is about getting more green energy and making it easier to transmit that green energy to the people who need to consume that, right? So to make sure that like the supply lines are there and the power resources are there to meet demands. Seems reasonable, right?
That's what it sounds nice. Like. It sounds wonderful.
Well, there's a good part of it. It says, and I'm going to quote from an article in The Atlantic at this point. It says, the Democrats' permitting reform bill would fill the coffers of the groups that tie up projects. It calls for $3 billion in federal spending for the sake of increasing the capacity of nonprofits and local governments to participate in the environmental review process. And it requires the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to pay the expenses of parties that want to intervene in regulatory proceedings but cannot afford to. In effect, the bill would subsidize objections to the projects that it means to accelerate. So, basically they're going to be paying for NIMBYism. Now, environmental review reform was something that like folks tried to tackle a couple years ago, right? Just because that's one of the biggest barriers to building absolutely anything is environmental reviews. And it can even be for stuff like wind turbines, for solar panels, for trains, for zoning reform. My goodness, like zoning reform got knocked down in Minnesota because they objected that the zoning reform itself, changing the law so that you could build more dense housing, was not put up to sufficient environmental review to help understand the impact of allowing people to build their own stuff.
Oh my God, Kevin!
It literally, like there's so much capacity for built stuff tied up environmental reviews. Again, this is not like, like eminent domain type of stuff. This isn't like use permits. This is environmental reviews. Like, how is this going to impact like the environment? And it's not even like exactly something that's going to be a huge impact. Like the zoning reform thing, it's filling out paperwork and holding community meetings and now subsidizing the ability of groups to be able to bring more of these legal objections to make it difficult to build absolutely anything in this country.
Yeah. So when you incentivize legal objections, what are you going to get? Like when you pay for legal objections to projects, what are you going to get? Communism. Yeah, that's what you're going to get. Communism.
I mean, yeah, partially, right? Like, but like literally, like you're going to pay people now. Like there will be a financial incentive. There's already incentives for people to be NIMBYs about projects, to say, not in my backyard. Like, I don't want this thing here, so we can't have this thing built anywhere. And now, like, you're going to throw money behind that. You're going to throw money making it difficult to do that, where like these nonprofits are like, oh, this is going to be a revenue center. We're going to make this part of standing up for the community, quote. And so we're going to file stuff on their behalf just to make sure that all the groups are represented, that historically underrepresented groups are going to have like the ability to make legal objections to this stuff. Like it's gonna, like, again, we've talked about it before, like how expensive is it to like build like a mile of like a subway track in New York City, like compared to like any other major city in the world. It's astronomically more expensive. And this is part of the reason why. There's a bunch of other reasons too, but this is a big part of the reason why.
Yeah, it's just an amazing situation that we get into where it is so obviously bad and going to have like the opposite effect of what we want. If we want green energy, what we're subsidizing is people who are going to argue with green energy. And that doesn't make sense to me. Like that, what we're creating this vicious cycle that can only end one way, with us being mad at our neighbors and fighting over things that are actually good for us, and so look, I get when communities don't want windmills. I don't get, like, only because there's a broad effect of light flickering, of sound and stuff like that. But I don't get when people are worried about solar panels. I don't get when people are worried about nuclear power plants. And I don't get when people are worried about burning natural gas to make electricity. Like, I don't get any of that part of it. So
it's carbon, Tim. Carbon.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, like, we're carbon-based life forms. And sometimes I think perhaps the carbon they want to reduce is us, Kevin.
There we go. That's your t-shirt phrase there.
Mm-hmm.
Like small sidebar on this. Like, did you see that the Biden administration is making it difficult to export liquefied natural gas now? And they did it because of environmental reasons as well.
I can't even keep up with the mental gymnastics that this administration puts the country through. And like, okay, please tell us more about this, Kevin.
Yeah, like, guy, I don't have it up. I should have thought of this for the show prep, but like roughly the outline is that environmental activists convinced Joe Biden that like we should put a moratorium on exporting liquefied natural gas because the United States should set the example around making sure that we're reducing like carbon impact, right? Problem is like, okay, we're exporting liquefied natural gas primarily to Europe to make sure that like the Europeans have a replacement for the natural gas that they were importing from Russia, which now can't be pipelined in. And the Europeans had already very foolishly, some of them, not France, but like Germany, shut down many of their nuclear plants,
right,
became dependent on natural gas, got cut off from natural gas, had no way of getting it now, and we're instead burning coal and or experiencing like power supply issues.
yeah,
And the Biden administration, in their geopolitical genius, said, you know what? We're going to make this harder on them. The Central Europe isn't unstable enough. Let's make this more difficult for them to get a natural gas resource that they need from the United States instead of building closer ties to Russia. Like,
yeah. I mean, if you want violence, you get violence from freezing, hungry, uncomfortable people who feel poorer now than they were 5 years ago.
It's going to radicalize more people. Again, destabilize, that country. I mean, like, again, Germany's like, they're still doing okay, but like, man, stuff can change quickly when your factory isn't able to run or you're not able to heat your home.
I don't know. Some of the green energy like zealots and it goes to that earlier gardening thing. Like it seems like they really hate middle class and poor people. Like they're like, we're taking on the biggest spectrum of making poor people poor and degrading their existence to the best of our ability. And for what now? So they can't have heat in Europe because all right, look, I kind of lose my mind over these things, and so I get at a loss for words because the words that are coming to my mind would literally make a mess and they can't be broadcast on the radio. Like they are attacking the poor and the middle class all over the world to signal their virtue about carbon, like to set good examples. It's nonsense. They need to stop. They're hurting people. All right. And that kind of hurt, the kind of hurt that they're offering is what is leading to violence all around the world. Period. Knock it off. How's that?
Yeah. No, I mean, like that, you're absolutely right. And it's that type of mindset where it's not even again, it becomes like a religious fanaticism.
Yeah.
Right. Like, because it doesn't even become about actually being climate neutral in some of these cases, or trying to like do a little bit better in terms of like carbon output, or like finding alternative solutions while making sure that people are taken care of, or making those effective trade-offs to say, okay, we're going to try to do better by the environment, but also people come first. People's survival comes first, right? No, instead, it's this degrowth mindset that I've said before is like one of the most dangerous and destructive ideologies that's emerging in both American and European culture. And actually, I'm going to read a tweet. I hinted at this at the beginning of the segment. I'm going to read one of the tweets from my city council person, Mary Lupian, who said, well, quoting on Twitter, "If we want change, we have to get uncomfortable. The truth is painful, but we must face the ugly in order to grow into something more beautiful, just and in alignment with how humans lived for thousands of years before we embarked on this failed experiment called quote unquote civilization."
Oh my God. She's a psychopath, Kevin.
Yeah,
you should run against her. Like literally just use that tweet. That should be enough to wake people up. But what I'm afraid of is
lawn signs. My goodness.
There's this mindset out there that what she says resonates with people who are filled with bigotry and hatred for their fellow man, who have taken on this problem that is only partially real as part of their personality, and that they're living out their childhood trauma, angry at the world, and they have found a vehicle for it. They found a religion, they found a cult, they found something that excuses their worst behavior and their worst sides of their nature. I'm not even joking, and I don't even want to make light of it. I want to somehow put an exclamation point on it,
No, I mean, yeah, it's bonkers. It's sick. And like, again, it's hard for me, like, because I usually try to give people the benefit of the doubt and think people have good intentions, but like, sorry, man, like if your ideology, if your zealotry means that like people, but it's like middle class, but especially people who are poor are going to live like miserable lives, if that means that like your house is going to be cold, your children are going to be hungry, why the hell would I get behind anything like that? It is insanity to me that like you would, and again, to be clear, that city council person was specifically talking about climate change and poverty, and they have this mindset like, oh, poverty is caused by capitalism. No, it ain't. Poverty is like the state of existence for mankind for most of its history.
Until capitalism came along.
Yeah, like the status quo, like people have a status quo bias. They think like, oh, like most everyone lives relatively comfortable from what they can see, and poverty is the outlier. Therefore, this condition must have caused that poverty. Instead of like, poverty used to be 99.99% of the human population, and now it's a small fraction of that because of the world we've built around. And our solution to continue to grow, to smudge out the last of the poverty that still exists. And it's possible to do that if we don't fall back into fanaticism and this ideology of like, we have to live with less, and we have to like make people suffer for the sins of what we've committed to the earth or whatever.
That aren't sins, but that was really well said, Kevin. I like the way that you phrased that there, and how you put it together. You captured the essence of the issue. I do think that we cannot understate nor overstate the items of this philosophy that are actually cult-like that they will just take on anything and say anything to justify. And again, I think at its heart, it's just this level of bigotry that I don't understand. And they're talking about poverty in the United States. And when we talk about real poverty in third world countries, like somebody's got to fix these people. And it's probably not necessarily going to be us, but it's got to happen.
Maybe, like, who knows? Maybe one of our rants goes viral on Twitter one of these days, but probably not. But like I want to keep like, again, like this type of stuff, this thing specifically is not benign, right? Like it, like that, like this is the hill I die on. Like the degrowthers, like they are like going to hurt people.
Not them specifically. They just want policies that are going to kill people elsewhere, where they don't have to look at it.
Yep, exactly. They don't have to look at it. They don't have to think about it. But like, if you make energy more expensive, if you make it less accessible, if you make our food systems more unstable, like it's kind of a problem.
Yeah.
And people will die because of it. But on that bleak note, we are coming up on a break again. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution on WYSL. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. Cody Anderson says, I heart capitalism and free markets. All caps.
Same, brother. Like, it works. You can make a living by serving your fellow man. You can make a living, like by growing food. It's an amazing time to be alive, but it's an amazing time to see what the cult of personality and the cult of bigotry and the cult of climate change alarmists have done. Guys like John Kerry, like this guy made billions of dollars off of his positioning in the climate alarmism. And here we are, like all of his stuff, we're still kicking 20 years after he made a stupid movie. And it's like, when
John Kerry made it. It was Al Gore who made the movie.
Who did I say?
You said John Kerry.
What's
him too, but
yeah, what's the difference really? Same guy.
Democrats who ran for president,
the brain cells that store their faces are like right next to each other in my brain. Sorry about that.
Democrat ran for president against George W. Bush. Yeah, close enough.
Yeah, close enough. Whatever. John Kerry, whatever. Al Gore. Al Gore goes back to the Clinton era. Holy cow, you're right. I should have been better.
Yeah. But let's see. A couple of these. Legacy Zach says, my town has a community garden that looks sad. I don't know how they do it in your town, but like in Rochester, I actually have a pretty good program for the most part when I'm not fighting with the city about this, where like private groups or groups of individuals can just take chunks of city lots that like no one wants to like do anything with and just like turn them into garden space. And that's actually kind of a cool thing. It's like,
Look, I started laughing because I had this memory. And Kevin, you and I have joked about how, growing our own food, we're not that good at it. But I grew up really poor, right? And I lived down on a what's called the lower decks in Oneana, and they opened up a community garden. And basically it was a disaster. Like my mom, God bless her, because she worked. My mom was a hardworking lady, and she'd come up with an idea. So we went and we got our plot at the community garden, and it was like we'd have to go over there and weed it, and we'd have to go there and tend it. And I'm just like, I can remember even as an 8-year-old, I'm like, I am gonna make money and buy freaking corn. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Like, I was so lividly mad. And we used to go pick blueberries. There was another one where I'm like, blueberries are $1 in the store. Like, I'm going to go make $1 somewhere. Like, this is
gotta be easier to make $1 than to do 45 minutes
wandering around the woods picking blueberries. And look, I grew up to being like an outdoorsy guy, but those things, though, like maybe because I'm a natural hunter and my mom is a natural gatherer, like who knows? Like, but still, it was ridiculous. It was absurd. But anyways, the community garden
like
is cool.
No, I get it. And like again, like part of me, like there's part of me that's like, man, it's so great to like be able to eat something you've grown like directly out of the garden, right? Like, and it's a good feeling.
It is.
Like even if it's not even objectively that good, it tastes like the best food in the world to you because like you worked and like made that thing, right?
Yeah.
And I want like, my son when he's old enough to like make sure he gets to experience that too. But also, I think about doing that or like, I know this is a Babylon Bee article too, but I remember like kind of busting my dad's chops a little bit because he had chickens and ducks and stuff, which were cool. Like they were fun. We had tons of like chicken and duck eggs, but also I'm like, Pomps, you spent like $1,000 on like chicken stuff for something you could buy at the store for like $1.20.
Yeah, you can buy it from your neighbor for like $3 a dozen. So like there is let somebody else do the chicken thing. That was actually, to be fair to that article, that was kind of one of the points that I felt didn't suck that came out of the article. The arguments about carbon emissions were ridiculous, though.
No, but yeah, it's like because when I think of like the people who've done those experiments where they're like, okay, how can I make a ham sandwich, right? Like completely from scratch, right? Without using like any of this supply chain. Like I'm gonna like go and make everything I need for a ham sandwich, and like it ends up costing them thousands of dollars and like hundreds of hours of their time just to make a ham sandwich, to grow the food, to grow the wheat, to process the wheat, to turn the bread, to raise the pig and slaughter the pig, and like all this stuff. No. Just for something you could buy for a couple bucks somewhere.
Yeah, it's wild. It's a wild fact of free market capitalism where everybody does a little piece of the puzzle and we all benefit. It works out really well.
Yeah. Anyway, I haven't mentioned iPencil in several months, so go read that if you're thinking about like producing some of your own stuff too. Like, which again, you want to do it, like great, to understand it, to feel good, you should be able to do your thing. But also like thinking about like iPencil and all the different like factors that go into like building something as simple as a pencil. It's pretty mind-blowing to think about how all that comes together with people voluntarily interacting with each other to build something that is both very simple and very complicated at the same time.
Yeah. Now, Shelley seemed to have a little better experience than I did with some gardening at one time or another. Selling 500 ears of corn at a nice profit and a decent price, sold out in 1 hour. Though this one I can sympathize with. Like part of turning 18, this is also from Shelley, was never having to take care of chickens again. You get choices when you're an adult. And yeah, chickens are a savage little beast.
Yeah. Now they can be mean. Ducks also kind of mean.
Yeah, they're nasty. Now,
especially the male ducks.
Male ducks are. Do the chickens kill the ducks? I can't remember.
I know with my dad's birds, the ducks always bullied the chickens.
Yeah.
Especially if you got like a male duck, because the male ducks are awful.
Yeah.
They are the worst.
My friends were raising baby ducks and chickens, and they hatched them together, and they're like, one of them ended up all dead. Like, I can't remember which way it went, but it was pretty sad because they were all excited. Like, all the eggs opened up, and they're raising them up under a hot lamp, and then like they come home, and like one tribal faction had exterminated the other tribal faction.
Wow.
Even genetically.
Brutal. Shelly says geese are the worst. Don't have any experience with geese, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I would say be thankful for that.
Yeah.
Nothing but bad reviews for geese.
For geese. they seem mean.
They are, yeah.
My experience with Canada geese and any geese out in the wild seems like geese just they don't like people.
They are anti-people. Definitely.
All right, we should get back to the regular show though. And Tim, what are we talking about next?
We've got to talk about the fact that, Kevin, we are completely unprepared for an attack from, well, now it's finally called unidentified anomalous phenomenon. So we've got to talk about what that word means. We've got to talk about how it's a big deal to our Department of Defense. And guys, like I'm telling you, invest in the military industrial complex. You cannot lose.
That's right. Well, it's seems to always make money. So that's
yeah, it does really well with that.
All right, let's head back in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and we've got a big one. Look, the most important issue in the world, like aliens are, out there strategizing their next attack on the United States. And look, we finally come clean. Our Department of Defense admits we are woefully unprepared for unidentified anomalous phenomenon, Kevin.
Yes. The new fancy term for UFOs.
Sure. But, I think just 6 months ago it was unidentified aerial phenomenon, and that was an inadequate identification.
Yeah.
And then it was before that it was unidentified flying objects. They've got to keep it complicated. But what they do know is that they need billions and billions and billions of dollars to prepare for whatever this may be.
Yeah. Well, like sort of though. Like it's not. I don't know. This isn't like totally unreasonable. Like it in the context of like we just had a drone attack on a. We'll talk about why there maybe shouldn't be bases all throughout the middle, but there's a drone attack in Jordan, and part of it was like, they misidentified a flying object and didn't realize it was something that was going to be hostile.
Yeah, and look, I think one of the things that's interesting about it is that there's for years now, for decades, there's been reports of like strange craft that can do like defy gravity, right? That appear to be operated with some form of intelligence. So I think one of the more interesting parts about this is that the government is slowly coming clean about the reality that there are things out there that they don't understand. That part I like about it. Certainly, I'm going to be critical in advance of anything military industrial complexy, but is there something real here? Is there something that we as a society should probably take a closer look at? My issue is this, like, because the government will be the sole arbiter of truth on it, will we ever really know the real story? So, like,
are they going to be the sole arbiter of truth? I feel like there's a bunch of folks who are pretty ferocious advocates of trying to uncover truth in this situation, maybe.
Yeah, but no
or sell stuff, whichever.
And the CIA calls them conspiracy theorists, Kevin. So I don't know.
I think a lot of people call them conspiracy theorists. It's not just CIA, but.
So yeah, no, I see your point. I take your point very well. Like I get it. And so again, we're getting to the point where we're at this confluence of things are happening that we can't put our eyes on. And as you pointed to the Jordan drone attack, Now, how did they misidentify it? Was it just because it was shaped differently, or was it like
basically they thought it was a friendly drone. They thought it was one of theirs. And then they didn't like double check that. Supposedly that's what I last I read about it. So if I'm wrong about that, sorry, but that was what I understood it to be, is that normally those things wouldn't be able to get that close. They misidentified it as friendly because they had another drone that was coming in around the same time, and that's how I was able to attack, which, unfortunately killed 3 soldiers and wounded 30 people. So it's pretty bad. It's a pretty awful situation.
And look, we're going to retaliate. We are where this is leading us to, and maybe we don't want to get there, but we're taking a pretty strong posture against Iran. That may be appropriate. It may not be appropriate. Certainly, I'm concerned, as always, when a Jordanian craft is allegedly backed by Iran, and that gives us an excuse to point our fingers at them. But it could all be aliens, Kevin. Let's be honest.
Could be aliens too. I mean, we're not prepared for the aliens either. If we're not prepared for Earth-based craft, then how are we going to be prepared for critters that are able to travel beyond light speed to get here and fly robots at us? I don't know.
Yeah,
I think Tim, really the key is that the military budget is not big enough, and they should invest more in that after we buy stocks.
Well, Nikki Haley would certainly agree with you, and
libertarian Nikki Haley, like I thought she was making a turn. Tim.
We're gonna segue to that. I'm segueing to it. Hold on. Give me a second. My newest libertarian hero, Nikki Haley.
I'm just gonna cut that clip and like just play it at you.
Oh my God, that would be great. Let's let that go viral. So look, there's an issue of, as you're saying, many people are advocating that the Department of Defense and their budget is not large enough. Nikki Haley is one of those people. But Kevin, what she did that was amazing, frankly amazing, because we do not see communication like this often enough from members of the political regime, whether you want to call it the Uniparty or whether you want to call it whatever you want to call it. Nikki Haley came out and said, hey, tariffs are bad. I am going to get rid of tariffs. We're not going to be adding more tariffs. Tariffs are a bad idea. And she's like, she even went so far as to say, tariffs punish poor and middle-class Americans. And that's a ridiculous concept. Like, I'm paraphrasing and probably adding a few words to make it more exciting, because I was very excited that someone said it. But what do you think? Is she going to just turn libertarian and chase the Libertarian Party nomination now?
Ooh, maybe. Like I think she could win. Like, let's just nominate her, man. Like she's gonna get us ballot access. Like, let's just do it. She's libertarian enough, right?
What would be a good ticket, Kevin? It's RFK Jr. and Nikki.
I knew that's coming.
Like, honestly, we'd get 5% of the vote. I don't see where principles should interfere with success. Like, let's be clear.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that's both the Democratic and the Republican Party's motto. So
if you can't beat them, join them, Kevin.
That's right. I don't see why principles should interfere with success.
Yeah. And guys, that's a joke. Hopefully that lands pretty well with all of you out there in the radio land, and on Twitter and on YouTube and on Facebook. Certainly Nikki Haley talking about tariffs was an exciting, or at least interesting, turn of events. Okay.
Right. She happens to be right on that issue.
On one thing. Great.
Yeah. It's that meme, the worst person makes a good point. That's how I felt when I saw that. But again, she is right, and Donald Trump and Joe Biden are both wrong about how they use tariffs to attempt to protect American industry, but in fact just throw more taxes at the American people. And I know he's saying, oh, these tariffs, they just go after foreign corporations, and no, they don't. Anything that Yeah, it just means that
everything you buy is more expensive if it comes from overseas. That's it.
And again, and it's not even like the end products either. Like a lot of times it's raw materials that U.S. companies use that end up getting passed along in the cost of their products. You pay it. You pay it every single time. Like you're paying more money. And even if it's like something that's completely made domestically, well, guess what? If the price of the competition goes up, the price of their product's going to go up too, because why wouldn't they? That's these companies aren't going to necessarily do the nice thing and they might undercut their prices a little bit. But, if your competitor now has gone up 20% and is well above what you have to pay for your product, then why not go up a little bit more because you're still going to be lower than the competition, and why not make a bit more off of it? Why not make a bit more money?
Yeah.
Everything's going to go up. That's what tariffs do. They're a tax on the American people. That's it. Full stop. It's not a tax on foreign corporations. It's a tax on you.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head. I don't think that people understand the impact of tariffs, and people, even Republicans and Democrats, need an economics lesson, right? Like a fixed cost, like a tariff, goes to the cost of the product that the consumer pays. The company is obligated to maximize its profit. That's their goal, right? So if there's an increase in the price of raw materials or an increase in the finished product that they resell, that is going to get passed along to the consumer. They don't care if they sell less. They're playing a percentage game and a numbers game. That's it. They have no concern about your pocketbook, period. If it costs more for them to make, it costs more for you to buy. Full stop. End of story.
Yeah.
And and then let's talk about the disparate effect on the middle class and the poor who all of a sudden their aluminum foil is 27 cents more expensive. And look, that's a ridiculous example, but like a rich guy doesn't care about that. It's you that it's going to feel it, that every piece of aluminum thing you buy is now 27 cents more expensive. Like that's something that comes out of your pocketbook that has a real impact on your life. So full stop. Tariffs are bad. Knock it off. And yay, Nikki Haley, go fight, win.
Yeah, on just this issue.
Just that issue. Yeah, no.
Nothing else. Like, I hope she loses on absolutely everything else.
She said her aggressive war posturing, though, Kevin, is to protect Americans from having to go to war. So that's great.
Yes. We're going to protect us from war by going to war. Gotcha.
Yeah, something like that. Is what she said. It's like
that.
Orwellian, how she's playing it out.
Yeah, the Department of Offense that she's going to create really makes me feel like it's really about defense.
Yeah. Good point. Like, typical Orwellian speak, that's probably what she meant. But she had to appease her MIC donors. So I get it. It's very circular, but now I know how to interpret what she's saying. Thank you.
Right, exactly. All right, good. Now that we're all clear on we're not going to go never, Nikki. We're all in with
all in. Wait, if we go all in on Nikki, though, that means we're really never Nikki in the way that Nikki communicates. Do you see what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's all very clear.
It is completely clear.
No, anyway, Tim, how did we go off the rails so much? I think we burned through 6 topics.
I love it when we do that, though, because it's fun and we get to have impulse comments, which and we even worked into the fact that RFK, after my joke last week of him not being a real libertarian, may in fact be the only real libertarian presidential candidate in 2024.
That's I did see that he's talking about running for a nomination, and it's usually what happens in the cycle of libertarian presidential politics is that someone will throw out some famous person's name, right? They're like, Ron Paul's totally going to run again, right? And we're going to get him again this year, and then he's going to win. But RFK Jr., he's actually talking about it and said he's had some talks with the Libertarian Party. He has a good relationship with them, and he's apparently going to be attending the California Libertarian Party convention, which is a bit controversial. There's controversy over that. Not just because his ideas are about as I'd say about as close to libertarianism as Nikki Haley's are. Like it's not all that much closer.
Sure, on the whole, yeah.
Yeah, like
in different areas.
Yeah, different ways, but like he's not really all that close to like libertarians ideologically. But I know there's other stuff going on where some candidates have been having trouble getting into debates, but they're having a whole thing for RFK Jr. And so they're working that out in California. But I know there's a temptation. Go ahead.
I didn't even know that there were libertarians in California, to be honest with you.
There are. Well, people say that about New York too, Tim.
I know.
To be fair, they're like,
I felt it was fair. I just wanted to get it out there.
Yeah, they're out there. They're out there. In Lars from California, I thought he was.
Yeah,
but yeah, there's a temptation with not seriously with Nikki Haley, but seriously with RFK Jr. to say, well, maybe he's famous enough and has enough money to get on the ballot and get ballot access. And that's going to be the temptation that the Libertarian Party faces this year. To be fair, that was the same argument for Bill Weld.
I was just going to say, I feel like we've tried this in the past.
It has, in fact, been tried.
And I'm just saying, like, yeah, Gary Johnson was a great candidate, but Bill Weld was a backstabbing fool. And, like, I don't think it worked out that well. I just want to put that out there.
One great, I predict it's going to work out roughly the same way. Good luck, Libertarian Party, on making that decision.
Well, what I'm seeing is that Libertarian delegates that know that are going to be delegates at the Libertarian Convention are like, it's a no from me. Yeah. And honestly, like I said, Kevin, I developed some relationships with some RFK supporters who are also like, it's a no for us. So
yeah, right. But anyway, we have to end the show now. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution on WYSL. We're going to keep talking a few minutes afterwards. You can join us then on the podcast. But have a great night, WYSL audience. Take care. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I've seen some of that too, though, in terms of like Mises people, radicals, like the pragmatists. They're all like, that's no for me, dog. That's we do not want RFK in there.
Well, so again, we've talked about it in the past. I like my RFK friends. I like the fact that they are less hostile and less cultish than Team Blue and Team Red devotees. Okay. And guys, this is with all due respect to you guys. Some of you guys are caught in a cult. You don't know it. And that's okay. But if you're here listening to Kevin and I offend you, we can talk about that. Like it's all right. You should be offended by what I'm saying because I am calling into question your entire belief system. But if we have a good conversation, I can fix you.
Yeah.
No. But anyways,
maybe he'll be more libertarian if we just nominate him and like he adopts the party line and then we can get some stuff done, and that's.
It's not going to happen. He's an independent, but he's a Democrat. He's a big government guy. He's libertarian on nothing other than,
well,
I'm comfortable with his positioning about the way that the COVID tyranny was implemented. All right. I think that he's been right and fair and on point there.
Yeah. Well, I think like overall, like that, with that point that I know like you have some agreements with him with, but he occasionally arrives at libertarian points, but from often the completely opposite direction, right? Like we've talked about it, like his like, I am against the people in charge now, and therefore we need to do this other thing. And that thing might be something that libertarians agree with, but like his solution to that, his premise for that is the wrong people are in charge. And like different people need to exercise power in the way that I'm looking for. Whereas libertarians say we need to remove the government's ability to exercise that power over others. Right. And that's
even going to war, man. Congress needs to do its job. I feel like they are underrepresented against the executive branch, and they did that to themselves. Like, and they can fix that. Like, that's their job. They can fix the disparate power of the executive officer to respond to crisis. Like
they could, they won't,
and they don't, and they would rather lecture and gesticulate on Twitter, and that's very annoying to me. It's very disappointing. There's Mike Lee, based Mike Lee, like that's his Twitter handle, and Thomas Massey are saying, guys, this has to come back to Congress. You guys cannot make these decisions without talking to Congress. And they're like, yeah, we can. And they do. You know what I mean? Exactly. There's an argument about the War Powers Act, empowering them to do it, and other authorizations of the executive branch to defend us and to fight terrorism. So all they got to do is say, hey, we're defending America and we're fighting terrorism. And they're like, they can do whatever they want. That's not okay. That's not how a free society is, and a free and accountable society is supposed to operate.
Yeah, and the Wars Power Act, like, ironically, gets abused so much because they, like, executives kind of use it as like, oh, we basically have a free pass to like go and engage in the conflict for 60 days, except for like,
and I get it. They can get away with it. They can make
and it like is meant to say like, okay, the president can respond to stuff quick, but then Congress needs to like get involved, and like they need to notify Congress so Congress can make a decision on whether or not to stay involved. But the executive branch has the ability to respond quickly to conflicts. Okay, right. But how it ends up getting used is that the president and the military will sometimes get us into conflicts in ways that may not actually be necessary to defending U.S. or allied interests. And now suddenly we're in a thing, and they're like, well, we can't stop now. We've already started this. Like the conflict's already like grown. That's basically the story of Libya. Like that's what happened there. Is President Obama, who was an anti-war like senator,
crusader. He was a liar, but he was an anti-war crusader. He was going to close Gitmo. He was going to do all these great things.
He was. He sounded better than most libertarian candidates nowadays. Legitimately, like he was really good on that stuff, like running for president in 2008. And then when he had the chance to call the shots, like one of the worst presidents on abusing executive power.
Yeah. Well,
he just sounded cool about it.
He's so cool. Oh my God.
So cool.
Guy. Kevin, did you I think that the CIA might have run out of money, and they seem to be defunding Operation Mockingbird all over the country.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Well, I have not heard about this.
There's been on Twitter, there's been big news. Mass layoffs at LA Times and several other journalistic outlets. All right. So I'm just saying,
you can hear the quotes
to me,
on that one.
It looks like the CIA is defunding Operation Mockingbird. Finally.
I get it. Right? That's a good one. Putting it together, putting it all together.
Yeah. I figured it out.
Yeah, I want to get this one. Patricia asked a question about that stuff. What would that mean for him on New York's ballot? RFK Jr. We don't have a libertarian line. So how it works, just to answer this question in a straightforward way, is that no, the Libertarian Party does not have like a guaranteed ballot line, but the Libertarian Party would try to petition to get on the ballot as an independent nominating committee, and then take on the Libertarian Party of New York name if it were to gather enough signatures to get on the ballot. If whoever gets on the ballot as a presidential candidate, if they get, what was it now, 5% of the vote in the general election, then the Libertarian Party gets a ballot line, which means that instead of having to collect was it like 45,000 signatures to get a statewide independent nominating committee candidate on the ballot, it would only have to collect a fraction of that among the enrolled voters of that party. So like when I ran for Congress back in 2020, and Cody's thrown out some corrections to me, 60,000 signatures, 160,000 votes to get ballot access. I thought 60,000 was more like you need that to be safe, not the actual requirement, but maybe I'm incorrect.
I thought the bottom line requirement was 45. I hope Cody corrects us or explains it better, because Larry explained it as 45,000.
Yeah, like you probably do need 60K to be safe, because what'll happen is that the signatures will get challenged, sometimes just because someone like writes their address funny, and Cody says correct.
Okay.
Right. And so like realistically, because that's why like with like Larry's campaign last time, like a bunch of signatures got thrown off, and that didn't help.
Sure.
And so and that'll happen. But like when I ran for Congress, I think I had to. Actually, it was a weird year because it was 2020. I think I was supposed to have collected like only like 200 some odd signatures, and then they cut the petition period short, and I only had to collect like 60 signatures, and I had like 120 or something.
Nice.
I was fine. We were like well on our way to like getting ballot access because 200 signatures was not that much. And Cody says 130,000 votes or 2% of votes cast, whichever is greater. All right. So sorry, got that number wrong. I thought it was 5% for some reason, 2%.
Yeah, I think there's something about to get federal matching funds. You got to get 5% of the vote, which feels a little bit ironic. Like libertarians in the game to get federal money, like feels weird when we talk about it like that. But it would certainly be nice. So, how much money do you think it would take to get an RFK or a presidential candidate guaranteed 60,000 signatures in New York? Like, how much money would it take?
I'm gonna guess. What's the going rate? Depends on where you are, but something like $5 a signature or something.
Sure. You can't bank that in New York because you can't pay by signature per se.
Yeah, no. Like when I say $5 per signature, I mean like how much it's going to take for someone to go out hourly and collect signatures.
Yeah.
Right. So for a paid petitioner, some paid petitioners, it's going to be a lot less than that, depending on what you pay them. And they're going to go out and collect 15, 20 signatures an hour, and they're going to be good. Yeah, the figure I came up with was like probably like $300,000 at least. Cody says 250 to 500.
Going for $1 million, because I was thinking it would be $10 a signature in the current inflationary environment, and we'd want to get double that, so it would be 445,000 signatures times 10 times 2 puts us at $900,000. That's what I think the number is.
No, it's probably about right. And I remember having this conversation. It was me and Phil Rickey and Jesse Lenny, who used to be I wouldn't say in charge, but he was heavily involved in the Working Families Party in New York, and we were all like just kind of talking before I went on WXXI, because we were talking about like third parties and stuff. And he's like, yeah, like frankly, like the ballot requirement, the signature requirements end up being like a money thing, because everyone just pays for signatures. They pay for petition collectors. You can do volunteers, but usually that's not enough, and it ends up just becoming how much can you fundraise to like make sure that your voice gets heard and put on the ballot. He didn't say this on there, but like we're having a conversation about it, and that it's true though. That's kind of what it ends up looking like. Is it ends up being just a cost instead of like paying a fee to get on the ballot. Like the fee is we pay petitioners to go and collect signatures to make sure that they can get on the ballot.
Yeah, I think it's a shame, but it's also a reality that free speech costs money.
Anyway, didn't want
$1 million.
Yeah, it didn't mean to like spend too much time on the mechanics of the Libertarian Party, but the question was asked, and we wanted to make sure that we addressed it.
All right, so yeah, go ahead.
I was going to throw out this one from Shelley too. We didn't end up talking about this one. 26 states, including Texas, are in support of Governor Abbott's decisions. Majority of states are ruled by a stroke of a pen, held by a man about to have a stroke. That's not governing. Throwing out a little jab at Joe Biden there. Maybe I can't believe we had to talk about this week. I didn't have this on my topic list either, but
I feel like you and I have delineated our border crisis feelings pretty well. That I'm more sympathetic to the people in the crosshairs of feeling like their property rights are eroding. And I came up with a new way to add to it, that there's too much property in the public sphere that we all own a piece of, that we should have that's another area where people are concerned.
We should how would that go again?
okay, there's too much, the government owns too much property, right? Like, and we all own a piece of that, arguably. So when the crisis lends itself to a certain amount of, I would say, problems of people crowding into areas that are making our neighborhoods change their composure, which I'm not sure how comfortable I am going down that road, really. I think that one of the things that gets lost in this is that most of the migrants are human beings trying to get here to work, and that the issue has been preserved for decades. So I don't know. For me, it's always a conundrum. Like, I think that I understand where Texas is. Their facilities are being overrun. Their systems are being stressed to the max, and people are freaking out. What do you think about that?
I think it is an accurate observation that people are concerned about systems being stretched to the max. They're concerned that there's a bunch of people who are crowding into some areas, particularly along the border, and the communities there don't have any way to legally like do something with them. And by do something with them, I mean like allow them to go and move on with their lives.
Correct.
Like literally, like, because again, like the government could say like, okay, you are allowed to go get a job and a home and get this assistance and then like move on with your life. Instead, they make it difficult. These folks end up kind of in stasis, and then you, as someone just living in the community, are like, why are all these people here just like standing around, getting bored, sometimes like, causing issues and using the community's resources? Like, what the hell? And you end up, to me, like the resentment ends up kind of falling on the wrong folks, where they end up resenting the people who are just there stuck in a weird situation because they're trying to improve their lives. And then who they really should be mad at is the government, who's preventing them from going out and being a productive member of the community.
I too am persuaded by the argument that a lot of this immigration is incentivized, and that is, if we didn't have an incentivized system and we didn't have the constant threat of losing our individual property rights, that I would be an open borders guy, right? Like that if we had a government that protected our property rights, that immigration wasn't incentivized, then I could be an open borders guy. And I'm not a closed borders guy, but I think that there's a nuance there that is important when we're trying to build rapport with people that aren't libertarians.
Yeah.
Nuance is not the right word. That's too soft of a word there.
Distinction? I don't know.
Yeah.
But so mostly like the issue specifically brought up is like whether or not the government of Texas should be able to construct barriers to people entering the United States, including using things like razor wire, and if the federal government has a right to remove those barriers that the government of Texas has put up, right?
Yeah, that's the issue this week. Sure.
Yeah, but that's the narrow in it. Like, you're right. Like, it is overall about like immigration. We've talked about immigration a bunch, and I'm not gonna, we don't need to rehash that full thing. Like, I think you said your part, I've said my part. We're not gonna do our full like hour discussion on it again.
Maybe,
or at least now. Show. Maybe, exactly. We could probably do a whole other show on that. But this issue is interesting in that it not only is it about the macro issue of like immigration, it's also about what the authority of the federal government versus the state government is, and whether or not a state government can prevent anyone from entering its border.
Yeah. I mean, according to the Commerce Clause, it can't, right? Like,
yeah, it can't restrict in any way people from entering a state, right? Like, because like imagine if like there were actual barriers to entry from states to states from other states.
Didn't Cuomo try that, and they actually had to like back off of it because everybody freaked right the F out back in the COVID days?
As they should, like, because I'd made that comparison to immigration before. Like if you decide New York sucks, like so bad that you want to leave, and many people do, you can go down to North Carolina or South Carolina or Florida,
West Virginia.
So, West Virginia, wherever you want to go in the U.S. And imagine, though, if like you try to drive down to Florida and instead you got stopped with barriers and razor wire. You're like, listen, like I got family down here. I just want to go in for the lower income taxes. And they're just like, no, we don't need any more of you liberals up here, like, or down here. Like, stay home. Go back to where you're from. And you're like, no, I'm basically one of you. Like, look, I'm getting away from that communist government up in New York.
Right.
And they said, nope, no more. Just ruining our state by coming here. Like that's which they do sort of say that sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think like you as a New Yorker should be able to flee as a political refugee, like down south. Like that's my take on it. Is that if one day I actually get sick enough of New York to be like, you know what, screw it, I'm going to North Carolina or something, I should be able to do that. Yeah. And I just don't think that there's any moral distinction between me doing that and someone from Venezuela doing the same thing.
I think that you're right. I think that you're right. I think that that's a valid, very valid thought experiment to put that out there. And I'm going to actually reflect on that for the next time we debate this issue so that I can find a way to kick your ass.
All right, good. Think about
that's
it.
That's a powerful
Kevin's
point.
Gonna be wrong.
So look, check that out. Cody, did you miss last week when I went full Neville Chamberlain and I was pretty much ready to divide, give Alaska to Russia and like just divide up Canada between us and Putin? Like I'm there. We'll give Russia, Alaska, and we'll just divide up the rest of Canada on the contingency that Putin accepts all of the Trudeau supporters, which won't work if they build a wall. Like if Vivek builds a wall, this is going to be a problem. Theoretically,
it might be.
Dark Closet of Mind asks a big question: is it true that the Libertarian Party is on the ballot for president in all 50 states? It's not true. We lost ballot access in 2022 in New York State.
Yeah, and in past presidential elections, even when the Libertarian Party has not had ballot access, so this includes like 2016, the Libertarian Party did get on the ballot in New York State, right? Collected enough signatures to do it, and that might happen again. It's just that the National Party has kind of started to signal, if not outright say, that they might not have the resources to do all 50 states this time because a lot of states need help. New York needed help to do that from the National Party.
We had an opportunity to regain ballot access and be a legitimate party, and arguably, like I don't know that there's another word for it. We failed, right? Like we failed. We haven't had hard conversations about it, as far as I know, and so there you go. That's where we're at in New York.
That's where it is. Yeah. Oh, let's see.
He's got a follow up.
Yeah.
I just heard them say on Breaking Points that they did, and that the Libertarian Party. So look, if you want real news, you have to come to Kevin and I, because like Breaking Points is not up to date on the ins and outs of the Libertarian Party. Now, that's why I was asking earlier, how much would it cost to put a Libertarian candidate on the ballot in New York State this year? And I think it would cost like $1 million. That's what I think.
Yeah. And that's again kind of the temptation of among some libertarians to say like, hey, we should nominate RFK Jr. because he is able to fundraise better and he can bring millions of dollars to get ballot access in all these states, and then maybe do well enough that he gets ballot access in these states by winning enough percentage of the vote, like in New York. So so that's how it is. Like that's the temptation. That's why some people, like, even if they don't agree with them, like if I'm being really nice to those folks who are being a bit cynical, that's kind of the temptation for RFK Jr.
Cynical, pragmatic,
pragmatic. Yeah. Again, like it's the same type of reasoning. That's why people like Bill Weld too. Yeah. Like legitimately, that's part of why Gary Johnson wanted him. He thought he brought legitimacy and respect and money to that process, and that would be enough to make a big dent in that election.
Yeah, and that freaking guy voted for Hillary Clinton. That freaking guy.
Just vouching for Hillary.
Such he I can't say enough bad things about him.
Fair enough, man. I get it, but yeah, I think we're gonna run into a similar situation if we have a an RFK Jr. Nikki Haley ticket, like,
yeah,
I don't know.
That would be I guess I would have to we'd have to form the party of real libertarians because that just wouldn't work. I had to give a shout out to Patty because she is our eye in the sky and our boots on the ground. She's the one that steered me in the direction of the Department of Defense story, and I forgot to give her credit during the show.
There you go. Thanks, Patty.
She deserves it, man. She deserves credit. She sends me these things, and they're great, and I appreciate it. And so at least this one got in the main radio show, Patty, and I'm sorry that I didn't give you credit for it.
I got one that we didn't end up talking about today, but it was one I was going to use as a fake news item. All right, real or fake? PSA: stop eating fried toothpicks.
Okay, that's probably true, and I got to imagine it's probably actually for a good reason.
Yeah, well, it's not for a good reason exactly. Like, apparently, like, there's a bunch of like TikTok videos of like people frying up toothpicks that started in South Korea, but in South Korea, toothpicks are a lot of times made from like cornstarch or potato starch.
Oh, okay.
But in the U.S., they're made of wood, and so when it got picked up in the U.S., people keep frying these wood toothpicks, and it's not the same. Not the same thing.
Oh my God! Hang on, I was talking about cheese sticks. Like
no toothpicks.
Yeah, okay.
Toothpicks.
All right.
People are frying toothpicks.
Yeah, don't. All right, hang on. Why would anybody deep fry? Like, I'm trying to get to the bottom of this millennial. It's obviously millennials, right? Like,
but no, it's not the millennials anymore. It's like younger Gen Z and Gen Alpha at this point. Millennials are like, man, we're in like the drudgery of our jobs. We ain't got time to fry toothpicks.
You'll always be a bunch of losers to me.
So no, it's the kids these days. They're ruining it. The Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas.
Kids.
Don't know what they're doing.
Sorry, Kevin. Now
next thing you know, they'll be doing something stupid like eating Tide Pods.
Yeah.
Who knows? But no, it's apparently a thing. But it's just confusion about like they're seeing these videos of people frying toothpicks, but they're videos from Korea where toothpicks are made of corn and like potato starch, and like they're like biodegradable and digestible if you like soften them up. Whereas in the US, they're made of birch usually. You should not try to fry and eat toothpicks. They're made of wood. Don't do it.
Thank whatever government agency came up with that public service announcement.
I think that was Bon Appetit. Actually, okay. So private sector doing that one.
Private sector came through. All right.
Yeah, don't eat toothpicks. It goes back to the discussion that we're having last week about the Department of Agriculture. Like, if it weren't for us, people would be eating chairs and dirt and stuff.
And toothpicks, apparently.
And toothpicks, yeah. If they had stepped in earlier, if the FDA and Department of Agriculture had told us what to eat, wouldn't be having this problem.
Yeah, Kevin, I got one last thing before we go. Bad news about the Venezuelan timeline, Kevin.
What's that?
Well, I think it's important to point out to everyone that in 1997, Venezuela was the second largest purchaser of the F-150, the Ford work truck. And wow. I mean, right after that, things turned ugly. So I'm just saying, we got to be careful.
Got to be careful. That's the causation there. It's nothing else. It was sales of the F-150 started going up, and that's when the trouble started.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I made a tweet saying that government schools would teach that as the causation. That is me. I did do that.
You did that.
Yeah,
that's a solid tweet, actually. To go find that, retweet it.
It's pretty cool. It was pretty funny. I mean, it had me giggling all the way to work.
Well, that's wild. All right. On that note, we should call it a night. Thanks, folks, for listening. All the comments, love them, appreciate them. All you folks out there, Shelly, Cody, Patricia, John. Don't know what your actual name is, Dark Closeted of Mine, but thanks for the comments. Appreciate y'all being here. We're gonna call it a night. Take care, folks.